The iconic cars that stand the test of time are defined by many things. Their beauty, in the case of the Jaguar E-Type, their innovation, in the case of the Mini or the original Range Rover, or simply their desire to be something different, like a Morgan or a Caterham. The Ferrari 250 series was defined by what gave it its name, the 3-litre Colombo V12, named after its designer, Gioacchino Colombo. Very few engineers get fated in the same way that designers do, unless they're Italian and they make engines. Colombo himself apprenticed with Vittorio Jano and in turn mentored Giuseppe Busso, all names as familiar to an Italian enthusiast as Pininfarina, Bertone or Touring. Colombo first made his name in the late 1930s, designing the 1.5-litre straight 8 that powered the Alfa Romeo Alfetta 158. The Alfetta debuted in 1937 and was blown away by the mighty silver arrows from Mercedes and Auto Union. But post-war, when racing cars were hard to find, they were dragged out of storage and dominated. The A158 won 47 of the 54 Grand Prix entered, including every single race of the inaugural Formula One season in 1950. Mercedes, eat your heart out. So, when Enzo Ferrari, having parted company with Alfa Romeo, wanted to outdo his old employer, it was natural he should turn to Colombo for an engine. The V12 configuration was not a common one in Europe at the time, but Ferrari was a great admirer of the innovative engines being built in the US by Packard, and so he commissioned Colombo to design an all-Italian V12. Little did they know, it was an engine which would go on to power Ferraris for over 40 years, including the most expensive cars ever made. First appearing in 1947, the 1.5-litre Colombo V12 featured single overhead camshafts, a 60-degree bank separation angle, and triple carburetors. This gave the very first car to wear the Prancing Horse shield its name, the 125. The numbers, by the way, denote the volume of each cylinder. Fascinating. The 125S sports car and its sister, the 125 F1, won a slew of races before the engine was up to 2 litres. This created the 166, which was used in Ferrari's first road car, the 166 Inter of 1949. Colombo left the company in 1950, but his engine carried on. Skip forward 2 years and it had doubled in size, now displacing 3 litres. Which, if you're paying attention, you'll realise means an individual cylinder volume of 250cc. The first of the lineage, the 250S, appeared in 1952, winning the Mille Miglia, the 12 Hours of Pescara, and recording the fastest lap at Le Mans. The car's successors, the 250mm and 250 Monza, failed to have the same impact, and by the 1950s, the Colombo engine had fallen out of favour for competition use. A V12 designed by Colombo's successor at Ferrari, Aurelio Lampredi, had replaced it. And a series of inline engines would find success around the world. But a sudden rule change by the FIA limited engine displacement for Le Mans and the World Sports Car Championship to 3 litres for the 1958 season. Enzo Ferrari, apparently never a fan of inline engines, decreed that the Colombo V12 would be brought out of retirement and fitted to the Ferrari 500 TR. With its cylinder heads painted red, the car was named the 250 TR, or Testa Rossa, which, if you can't guess, means redhead in Italian. Much reworked, the engine now produced the magical figure of 100 horsepower per litre. The 250 TR won the 24 Hours Le Mans in 1958, 1960 and 1961. It won the 12 Hours of Sebring in 58, 59 and 61, the 1,000 kilometres of Buenos Aires in 1958 and 1960, and the terrifying Targa Florio in 1958. These wins netted Ferrari the World Sports Car Championship in 1958, 1960 and 1961. Only missing out on making it 4 consecutive wins due to Sterling Moss and Aston Martin's spectacular fiery finish in 1959. The Ferrari 250 TRI 61, incidentally, was the first car to use a rear spoiler. A vertical panel was tucked into its tail to try and prevent exhaust fumes entering the cockpit under braking. Test driver Richie Ginther, though, commented that actually the addition improved high-speed stability, albeit at a cost of top speed, and the feature was added to all examples. Meanwhile, Enzo Ferrari was funding his beloved racing program by selling road cars, powered by that very same Colombo V12, albeit with 3 rather than 6 carburetors. The first 250, known as the Europa, and introduced in 1953, actually used a Lampredi V12. But that was quickly ditched for the Colombo, and the car renamed the Europa GT. This was the car that also began the long relationship between Ferrari and Pininfarina, which was chosen to build the bodies. Although sold as road cars, many of the 250 models were actually used in anger by gentleman racers, particularly the Berlinetta models. The original acquired the name Tour de France after a hat-trick of victories in that 10-day trial from 56 to 58. Its successor, the 250 GT Berlinetta Interim, promptly repeated the feat in 1959. Alongside those, however, were the more glamorous and, dare we say it, the more practical 250 variants. The 1957 North American market 250 California Spider long wheelbase used the same engine as the Tour de France, even though it was intended to appeal to the Hollywood set. More luxurious cabriolets and coupes followed from Pininfarina, including a 4-seater, the GTE, of which nearly 1,000 were sold. The final iteration of the 250 lineage was the Berlinetta Lusso, literally translating as luxury, and it was a true gentleman's express. The Colombo engine itself soldiered on for many more years. Thanks to the engineer's foresight in designing it with a 90mm bore spacing, it was relatively easy to increase its displacement. Gaining dual overhead camshafts, it powered the no less beautiful 275 and 330 series Ferraris and the legendary 356 GTB4 Daytona. It finally bowed out in 1988 in the 4.9-litre form of the Ferrari 412i. But wait, are we forgetting something? Ah yes, 3 letters, GTO. Based on the 250 GT short wheelbase, arguably the prettier car, the GTO, the O standing for Omologato or homologation, was designed for Group 3 racing against the Cobra E-Type and Aston Martin DP214. Incidentally, it's a long-standing myth that Enzo somehow fooled the FIA into homologating the car despite only building 39 rather than the required 100. In fact, the car was deemed close enough to the original 250 short wheelbase to allow it to race as a production model. The result of extensive aerodynamic work by engineer Mauro Foggieri after a mass walkout in 1962, and Scaglietti, the car that would become the most expensive in the world, did not win many fans at first. At the factory, the prototype was dubbed Il Mostro, or the Monster. And when it was launched, the press nicknamed it the Anteater, due to its long, drooping nose. Regardless of its reception, it worked. And the GTO won the over 2-litre class of the International Championship for Manufacturers in 1962, 63 and 64. It also took Ferrari's Tour de France tally to 9. By 1964, though, the GTO was uncompetitive, and just 5 years later, one was bought for $2,500. However, the car's unique position as one of the last front-engine GT winners, and one which could be driven to and from the track, helped grow its mystique. 2 years ago, one was sold for $70 million. And last year, the Italian courts ruled that the 250 GTO was a bona fide work of art, making it illegal to replicate it, as if that were even possible.